My first month had $100 in sales.
Nice.
And the percentage change is quite entertaining to see, but it's a slow grind initially, and then it really becomes more exponential in growth, at least from everything I've seen, because I started off with about $150 of sales the first month, and then it went up to about 1,000, and then doubled, and then doubled, and then doubled and doubled.
And what made you think it was a good idea to get in this business?
I went online and I saw people trash talking it, and that's how you know that there's money in it, because...
What's up, guys? I'm here with Max, who's done 61,000 in 30 days. He's only 19 years old. Welcome to the channel, Max, and tell him how you did it.
Yeah, it's a bit of work. I definitely say I don't work the typical hours. I work definitely more hours than the average person. I know your typical person probably gets about 10 to 20,000 if they're doing it right. But I work everything off.
Yeah, you can say you can work your ass off.
Okay, well,
I'll send it to your mom afterwards. So you're all books. I forgot to say that you're all used books, CDs, DVDs.
Yeah, so
you do a combination of cherry picking. You do consignment.
Yeah, I do about 66% of my stuff is all books, and then the other 33% is disc media and all that other stuff. Yeah. I found that I enjoy doing books more because they're easier to sort through. I know that they're a bit clunkier and they can be a bit heavier to do, but there's still a great advantage in doing books. So people who do only discs, they still miss out on that advantage, I'd say.
Yeah. So what's your, do you have a route you run on weekends? You said earlier that you work a lot of hours.
Yeah. So the thing about it is if you're in a decently sized area, so you're not in the middle of nowhere, there's going to be thrift stores and there's going to be libraries and there's going to be plenty of places to source, even yard sales. And the trick is you just simply have to find those places and almost group them up mentally into different categories or sections. And you don't even, I recommend routes, but even just improvising, just depending on how often you go, because every source is different. Every source has different refresh rates. So the amount of times, the amount of stuff that comes in can vary each time. And usually if you give X period, then it'll be back up and running and you'll get a full haul. So you have to take that into account. There's many different factors really that go into a source and a quality of a source.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to dig more into that. Before we do though, can you kind of talk about how you first got started, what kind of exposed you to this business? And then how long did it take you to get to 61,000 in sales?
Well, I can tell you that I started selling online when I was 13 years old. I ran an online video game store. I bought some stuff off of eBay and flipped it over and threw it onto Mercari because video games sold for higher on there for some reason. But I did that for about 5 years, and then I helped a library start an online eBay store, and that's when I was encountered to actually selling books online. And from there, about 22 days into me turning 18, I started my Amazon account, and I've built up to $61,000 in under a year. I'm actually reaching my year mark in about 6 days.
That's awesome, man. Congrats. And what did the progression look like? Did you start out, with a couple thousand off the bat your first month, or did it take a little bit longer?
No, my first month had $153 in sales.
Nice.
And the percentage change is quite entertaining to see, but it's a slow grind initially, and then it really becomes more exponential in growth, at least from everything I've seen, because I started off with about $150 of sales the first month, and then it went up to about 1,000, and then doubled, and then doubled, and then doubled and doubled. And that's eventually how I got to this point.
And what made you think it was a good idea to get in this business?
I went online and I saw people trash talking it, and that's how you know that there's money in it, because people trash talk it.
Yep. And was there TikToks you saw, or what did you see online? Was it Reddit forums, or?
I saw Reddit forums. I saw Seller Central Forum, which can noticeably become a little bit more negative than any other source that you see. But what actually was the sole trigger to me going into it is because I saw somebody else at a thrift store doing it. I didn't even ask him, and I just made the commitment and thought it would be a good idea because I deal in books and I know plenty about books anyways.
Yeah. And using Scoutly, Scout IQ, how are you scanning all these books?
Yeah, I'm using Scoutly right now. I do have to say that there is some benefits to Scout IQ, but I know that they've been having issues recently, at least in terms of ranking and sales scores.
I actually just started recently recommending Scoutly. And a big reason why I promoted Scout IQ was because my best friend owned the company and he innovated the market. He created eScore. He was always making the app better. Eventually, they integrated with my consignment business that I built and sold. I'm sure you've heard of restricted inventory. And so there's a lot of reasons why I was promoting them, but now I actually promote Scoutly because it is cheaper. And it also, my friend doesn't own Scout IQ anymore, so that's a big
Mhm.
like I'm always about representing my friends' businesses. Like my friend comes out with a T-shirt, I'm buying it. I don't care if it's
Mhm.
$100. You know what I mean? So I'm ride or die when it comes to that. And also, there's one feature I really like about Scoutly that Scout IQ never did, and they just recently wrecked their
Mhm.
user interface. They try to make it like more simple, and
Yeah.
it's terrible. But anyway, hopefully they'll revert it.
From
Listening
what
to
I've heard about Scout IQ 2, it's very, very bare bones right now. I haven't dug into it personally, but from folks that I've heard,
yeah,
it's
there's
it
certain
does.
information you want, you know, and they're just trying to they're trying to pull it back
Mhm.
even more. Scout IQ already simplified the business model, and then
Mhm.
Scoutly copied them, but now they're just kind of the new owners don't understand book selling, and they're stripping it away even more. But the one feature I'm talking about is like when you scan an item that doesn't have any FBA offers, and it's got a low offer count, maybe zero offer
Mhm.
count, it will actually ding it green automatically. So if you scan a book with zero offers, it'll ding it green.
Mhm.
Whereas in the past, Scoutly and Scout IQ, and Scout IQ currently still doesn't ding it green if you scan an item with zero offers.
Mhm.
And it just says, oh, this isn't good. But out of stock items are sometimes the best items. So when you scan an out of stock item for an app to notify you, hey,
Mhm.
um, let's replenish this, it's pretty good. So anyway, enough ranting
Well,
on that.
yeah,
Uh,
it certainly is a feature that isn't the greatest in saying in digging red, but it's not really an issue in the long run. If you actually spend the time and develop the knowledge of the app, I don't think it would really evolve into an issue unless you're feeding into it and want to be ignorant about it. I'd say it's just something that comes along in that mastery curve of getting used to the softwares and getting used to any software. Period. I'd say.
yeah, yeah. And then so you're using Scout IQ or Scoutly, sorry,
Mhm.
to source items. Can you talk a little bit more about your sourcing strategy and like what exactly, what kind of triggers you're using and what determines if you purchase something? Like, are you keeping your average sales price high? Do you have rank rules, all that?
Well, I think it's a generally good idea to if it's lower if it's a lower margin product but with a higher sales score or higher sell through rate, it definitely would be better to commit to because you're getting that money faster than something like a long tail inventory. And if how I think about it is if you're sourcing, you have a set pool of items that you're going to go through. So the only way if you're working set hours to increase your inventory output is simply just either getting more stuff by increasing your trigger set or finding better sources or even larger pools of items to go to for your time. So my answer to that would be simply saying to get a more inclusive trigger set. That would probably be the best option, but be aware that that comes at the trade-off of devaluing your time a little bit because for all the profit that you go there, you have to spend just as much time inputting it into the system, no matter how fast the listing software is. So there's pros and cons to it for sure, especially if you're going into something like a library sale. Taking even varying your trigger sets related to your cogs is definitely a good way to see it because if you're paying $4 for a book, I wouldn't want to get $2 out of it. I'd want to have maybe a 1-to-1 ratio. So I vary my trigger set based off of usually the quality. So if it's a library sale where the pool is large and the general cost. So if of course I know there's flat bars. So if you say make $1.50, but if the cogs is $26, you wouldn't want to go for that, you know?
Mm-hmm. Did you use Mike, the used book guy's triggers to start out?
To start out, yeah, I did, and I varied it a little bit by making it a little more inclusive. However, I still base it off. I still don't use it for the most part. I actually use my head to think about it, and that's the very important thing of not using an earbud because there's a lot of analytics that play a story because every single item tells a different story. So your
Mm-hmm.
copy of James Patterson is going to tell a way different story than the history of anatomy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I place my bets on the history of anatomy.
Mm-hmm.
So if you guys want just basic trigger sets, because I know you're probably like, well, what the heck do I do? Mike the Used Book Guide does have some really good ones. You can type in Mike the Used Book Guide triggers on YouTube. Go check out his channel. Great resource to have. He does 20,000 in sales every 30 days, 8,000 profit. So great resource. Let's get back into your actual sourcing strategy. You said you compartmentalize these different
Mm-hmm.
sources. Do you want to talk kind of on a weekly basis? What are you doing Monday through Sunday? And how do you approach these different sources? Because I feel like you have an interesting outlook on it that a lot of people are
Well,
like, oh, well, I went to the thrift store and I didn't get anything. This business model doesn't work.
Well, I mean, there's really a four square model of how you can think about it. There's either going to be high cogs or low cogs, and then there's going to be high quality and low quality. And for the most part, most scanners are going to want to get high quality and high pool of stuff. And that's for most scanners, I'd recommend simply endorsing those. So that would be something like your estate sales that are really competitive, or even book sales. I know competition can be wide, but if you go on different trigger sets than other folks, then it's not really even a race. It's kind of just at your own leisure. And what I like to do is I like to almost compartmentalize into those different categories. So, of course, I'll focus more on high value, high pool, but something you got to realize is even though that your time will be worth less going to other sources, for example, something where there's a lot of lower value stuff. For example, there might be stuff in the 16 to 17 range, and there might just be a lot of it. That would definitely be something to go for instead. Of course, you might want to value your time differently, but it's just simply making it worth your time, because those high quality sources, they run out. If you are very active about it, they're going to eventually run out, and you have to either wait for them to refill, or you're going to have to find new areas or travel further, which many folks don't want to do because it costs gas and it costs their time. And I break them down, and I'll say, hey, I'll hit this area, the specific geographic region, and I'll hit all the places where I know I can get low value stuff, but there's a lot of it. Well, some places I'll go and I'll grab a bunch of high value stuff. I'll save aside maybe a weekend or a day where I know I'll be able to spend more time for it.
What do you mean more time? Like, why do you need more time for the high value stuff?
Because I'd be able to get more of it, and it levels out. It almost averages out your time value to be even higher than that of just simply. It's really aggregates, because there's going to be some days where you get nothing. There's going to be some days where you get a lot of stuff, and typically you want to, in order to be resourceful, you have to spend more time getting the more valuable things, and that's the best rule of business. Period. Of course, bring the value of your time. If you're out doing an activity that makes you $5 an hour, don't do it.
Yeah, it's actually kind of insane. Like, I'm bringing you on the channel, interviewing you, but 61,000 is pretty insane just for cherry picking.
Mm-hmm.
Like, congratulations. Like, you're doing really good. And you said about what percent of that was your consignment business out of that?
It's maybe about 20%, maybe 15%, because I still have a little bit of bulk. I don't spend a lot of time on bulk lots because I know that it can really be luck of the draw, but a majority of it is cherry picking because it's a tried and true method. I mean, people have been doing it for decades, I'd say, at least on the online.
Yeah, since you were literally in the womb.
Quite literally.
That's awesome. What advice would you have for like a brand new person watching this channel and they're like, oh my God, he's doing 61,000. Like, how can I get just to 10,000 in sales a month? Like, what would your kind of course of action be?
Well, there's two ways to go about it. First off, consistency is very important, because if you think of it this way, if you throw in one pool of items, so let's say you throw in 1,000 items all at the same time, that pool of items will sell through eventually. It'll start off high and then slowly sell out. But what you got to realize is, if you want to have consistent sales, is you need to be sending either the same amount of items in or more per week. So there's some math that I like to generally think of that lets you assume how many listings you need to be able to get to said point. So if you want to make, let's say, 30 sales a day, then you're going to need to have a sell-through rate in mind. So if you have a sell-through rate of, let's say, 0.5% a day, then you can divide 30 divided by 0.5%, and you'll get the number of active listings you'll need. And what you can do from there is you can multiply your average sales price, because usually if you have a trigger set, it'll usually average out to one average sales price, assuming that you're not getting random days where you're getting $400 books. And you can multiply that and get your expected revenue and your generally expected profit if you have your percentage of actual profits from that revenue. And you can almost math it out to see how much stuff do I need. And you got to realize that it's not actually that far away to do $10,000 a month.
You want to break down some numbers? Do you have them on like, let's just say an average sales price of?
Yeah. So let's say, I'll pull up my calculator right now. If you, let's say, have an average sales price of, let's say, $18,
yep.
Very, very honorable rate. And your profit breakdown is probably about 45%. So 45% of that revenue is going to be profit. Then you can say that your average profit is going to be $8.10 per item. And if you want to sell 30 items a day going off of that average sales price, let's say your sell-through rate is 0.75% a day. That's about what my sell-through rate is. And usually if you have a somewhat mid-range repricer, so you're not aggressive about repricing, that's what it should average out to, assuming that you're getting good inventory in and you're not sending in your no rank or zero rank items that haven't sold in 30 years. So if you want to sell 30 items a day, let's say, and divide that by 0.075%, you'll need 4,000 active listings. 4,000 active listings to sell 30 items a day. And hypothetically, if your average profit and your average sales price, you'd be making $540 of revenue a day, and you'd be making $243 of profit a day. And of course, there's many changing variables in it, but that general equation you can use to approximate how much money you're going to be making. And of course, you can think of it as how many items you're sending in a week. So if you just think of it at its base terms rather than I send in 1,000 items all at once and it's going to flush out, then that's how you get more of a consistent business. And consistency is the key in that. That's what I'd say.
Yeah.
And the same applies for even things like eBay or any other online sales. But that sell-through rate is going to be approximately constant, and you can just guesstimate your profits as a result of it. And from what I've seen in my calculations, it comes through, and it's pretty accurate.
And so how many items are you sending a week to maintain your business?
I send in more than I sell. I'm still sending in more than I sell, and in the last few weeks I've sent in between 1,000 and 2,000 items. I'm going to be honest with you. It's a lot of items, I'd say, and it's definitely not realistic to most people. And I think that's pretty reasonable to say, but that's generally what I send through, and I have employees who work through most of it because my time could be worth more just finding more places to source through.
Very good. And so you want to talk about how do you list these items and how have you've delegated the listing? So kind of walk us through like the operation of how you're getting these out, especially after the API changes. There's a lot of issues people are dealing with.
Well, fortunately, I didn't run the business too incredibly long before the API changes. Of course, I was just getting set up with my first employee at that time, so they still had time to adjust. But right now, we get the items in, and they have to be marked indicated source and COGS, or cost of goods sold. And from there, it should be all ready to process. So it's just scanned into GoToLister, and then we set them aside into one-box batches. So from what I've noticed, one-box batches do a lot better than just filling up a batch with 800 items at once. Something you got to realize is some batches, they'll remove items randomly, and they won't even announce it sometimes, and that can be an issue. And some items, they can just go missing even if you have lots of items all at once. They'll just disappear on you, and they'll come back a week later. And it just becomes more inefficient if you have the huge batch because it takes longer to list through, and it can take you time just sending it back out and sending it back in. Of course, before the API, you could just remove the items while it was in the batch sending. But now that you have to spend an extra hour of your time removing it, having precise small one-box batches would be the best thing, in my opinion. And it reduces the issue of having, let's say, you have 3 boxes worth, but you have 3.5 boxes worth. So you can't remove that half box. You just have to live with a half box, or you add more. But if you're on a timetable, that would be an issue. So I support the one-box method, and I scan them in, and we weigh it out. So we get it to 48 pounds, usually on our scale, and then that can make adjustments for the box weight and everything. I think we go a little bit lower now. I think we're at 47. But from there, we let it sit for a day, and I check through the pricing because they get their first estimate of the pricing, and I have to go through it and make sure everything and they don't screw things up because there's a lot of human error that goes into pricing items. Of course, it's not necessarily difficult, but there's, of course, manual input here and there, and you want your items to be perfect. And from there, we send the batches in the day of, and most of the time, probably about 95% of the items get through, and we just load them up in boxes and get the labels for them, and we just chug through as we go, I'd say. And that's the general process I've set up, and there hasn't been much issue with it, I'd say.
Nice. Yeah, we're actually thinking of making a 24-hour send button. So you just program it, and then it automatically sends, so you don't have to go manually click it again.
The only issue with that is there's still the time where the price needs to be checked, and many times I can't check their prices right after they're done sending it in. So there's still manual input that has to be input even after all the items are inputted in the system.
Yeah.
At least for my process. But if you're an individual person and you check your prices as you go, that wouldn't be any issue at all. But
so walk us through, what are you doing? You're looking in the batch, and you're just what exactly are you looking for when you check prices?
Well, something that I use a lot for is I don't just check prices. I check for counterfeit warnings because that's still a very important part of the business. Sending in counterfeit books are still a matter of whether your store gets taken down or not, because whether you like it or not, those law firms are very firm on those counterfeit ones because they know what is highly counterfeit just as much as books run, if not even more informed. And it's something you have to be aware for. And checking through and pricing, I'd say it's just simply a matter of, did they match the buy box, or did they go way too low? Did they go too high in their estimate? And it can be honestly really subjective as to your own preference, because an item can sell for $1 higher or $1 less, and it just depends on how fast you want to sell. It's really almost like an art in that way, where it's subjective and really personalized to how you want to price it. So if you're fine with selling items for higher but taking longer, then it'd be fine. As I'm in the game of moving items out quickly, a lot of times I don't take that for granted, and I'll cut prices heavily if it doesn't look right. For example, the rank is too high, or one reason or another.
And then what are you doing for repricing? Do you have reprice it, or
yeah? So I have multiple repricers because I've realized that if you go through any sort of repricer, they're going to have some sort of dead spot. So every repricer has some sort of dead spot. For example, Reprice It doesn't reprice active enough, and NeuroPrice, you have to reprice it through your own efforts, and it takes greater time. So I use multiple repricers. I use Reprice It and I use Aura. But the tricky thing about it is it can get really complex in how you're coding it, because a lot of the times repricing overlaps, and you have to you have to deal with that to where it doesn't break each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. I don't think I've ever used two repricers at once. That's interesting. But yeah, you're right. Every repricer has its limitation for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So what advice would you have for people? And you want to talk a little bit about your consignment business, which, by the way, guys, I fully endorse this. I built my book business thrifting back in the day, and I think I only got up to like 20,000 in sales, and then I busted through 80,000 in sales when I launched my consignment business, restrictedinventory.com. So I'm super excited to see you doing your own consignment business, and the fact that Mike the Used Book Guy says it's good makes me trust it more. But if you want to talk a little bit about your consignment business and where people can find you, and I'll link everything below.
Yeah, so some big issue that I've seen newer sellers get into is gates. I know if you're going into it, you're going to get scared right away. After you get back from your first thrift store, you're going to realize if you didn't check right away, I'm gated in a majority of the stuff. And some of those gates do come down, especially as you sell more, but some brands, they don't specifically allow even permission to ungate. So your brands like Sony or Disney, they don't allow ungating. And what I'm doing here is I'm allowing you to monetize those items that you may have bought or are very valuable, but you can't monetize. And I'm allowing 50-50 consignments. So essentially you'd be sending the items to me, and I have a document and spreadsheet, and I control payouts basically through Cash App, Venmo, however you see fit. It's just simply sending the items to me, and I'll have the money for you in due time.
Do you pay once a month? Do you pay every 2 weeks?
Yeah, I usually send when I'll usually let people know if they have money in, and I'll send them at will. But I've been working on a more routine structure, so I'm sending in routinely. But usually, if it's a few dollars, then I can just let you know, say, hey, you don't have a lot. If you want it, you can have it. But I have it all set up so you can personalize it to how you want it to be, and I'm flexible in that way, and I don't mind working with anyone really.
Are you using the tracking spreadsheet for consignment payouts?
Yeah, so I have my own built spreadsheet through Excel, and I have it so where all the sales hit my own sheet, and I can share that sheet with you, and it'll tell me when the funds actually hit reports repository. That's the report that shows all the transactions actually clearing account level reserve and hitting your account. Yeah, and that's when it's ready for payout.
Awesome, good work, man. So we'll put all your links below to your Discord and everything. If people want to reach out to you on Facebook, you're there too, right?
Yep. So I should have a fax page that you're able to look through if you have any other questions, and there should be plenty of ways to contact me through there. And I'm on other Amazon selling Discord servers, so you actually might see me indirectly, and you could just simply reach out.
Heck yeah. Well, thank you so much, Max, for coming on. And if you guys want more videos of Max, we're shooting more after this, so they'll all be linked below as well. And much love, man.